a wealthy entrepreneur found murdered in his waterfront home.
He was laying face down with his hands kind of tucked up under his pillows.
The entire house had been ransacked.
It didn't appear there was any struggle. It didn't look like he saw it coming.
As leads go cold, investigators turn to the victim's loved ones for answers.
Everybody loved Dad. Nobody hated Dad. There were so many feelings. I didn't even believe it.
But the investigation reveals a family man who lived a bachelor's lifestyle.
He enjoyed his life, he enjoyed partying.
It looked as if he had engaged with somebody to essentially set up a date.
Those messages were very clearly talking about money.
And when detectives zero in on a suspect, it leads to a desperate manhunt that will take them over 3,000 miles away.
She liked shiny things. She liked driving around in a Mercedes.
I think it was premeditated, 100%.
I just kept telling her your best bet is to turn yourself in, because if you're running from something, it's just going to make it so much worse.
March 3rd, 2021, Clackamas County, Oregon. At 11:28 a.m., a 911 call is made from an upscale home on the Willamette River.
How can I help you?
I came over to my boss's house and I found him and he's dead.
Okay. Is he cold to the touch or stiff?
I didn't touch him, but he's in a pool of blood.
The caller, Tony Morrell, says he became concerned for 62-year-old Jimmy Pearson after not hearing from him for several days.
Mr. Merrill was not only his friend, but he also worked for him. He found Mr. Pearson naked, and he had blood all pooling all around his head. As soon as he saw the blood, he got scared, exited the residence, and then called 911.
This call originally was dispatched to Deputy Fredrickson. He's one of our patrol deputies. He responded to the scene. It was a very nice home in a very nice neighborhood. The residence's driveways are gated, so you have to have a code to get into the driveway of the residence. It's a very nice home. It's very large.
Deputy Fredrickson enters the master bedroom, where he finds an unresponsive male victim lying on the bed.
He was laying face down with his hands kind of up over his head, tucked up under his pillows. Deputy Fredrickson could see the blood around his head area on the bed.
A swift search of the bedroom confirms the victim is the owner of the house, Jimmy Pearson.
Deputy Fredrickson did find a wallet on the nightstand, which had an ID card in it, and the ID card appeared to match the deceased person on the bed. Deputy Fredrickson moved one of the pillows to see if there was any firearm. Because the amount of blood, I think he was guessing that it may have been a gunshot wound.
He couldn't determine where the blood was coming from, and he didn't know if it was self-inflicted.
After a preliminary search of the scene, no weapon is located. However, there are signs of what looks like a break-in.
The entire house had been ransacked, drawers opened, things obviously missing, like someone had gone through just about every room and looked through everything.
Homicide detectives quickly arrive, accompanied by the medical examiner.
One of the things we noticed when we walked into his bedroom is that there was a really pungent smell of decomposition, so we knew he had been dead for several days.
As they were examining the body, they did find what appeared to be a bullet wound to the back of the deceased's head.
Until the medical examiner could conduct their pathology exam, we weren't going to be able to 100% say that he died of a homicide. But we were treating it as a homicide. People, when they commit suicide, don't typically shoot themselves in the back of the head.
There were no weapons. There were a lot of unknowns. So trying to find out when something occurred is one of our first steps. reaching out to family, friends, anybody that can give us an indication of where they've been, what they've been doing, and who they've been spending time with.
Jimmy Pearson was born August 19, 1957, in Dearborn, Michigan. He was one of 4 siblings, and their home life was anything but perfect.
His dad was Al Pearson. He played professional hockey for the Detroit Red Wings. However, he was an alcoholic, so that put a damper on his mom and his relationship. So his mother ended up divorcing his dad when he was very young.
Faced with raising the children on her own, Jimmy's mother moved them to Oregon in search of a fresh start.
She had 4 kids, so she spent a lot of hours at work, and they pretty much had to fend for themselves.
He saw his mom working all the time, so he thought he could help out. He, at a young age, would be out mowing lawns, doing whatever he could to provide, to bring in money.
By his early 20s, Jimmy was a hard-working, ambitious young man ready to start a family of his own.
I met Jimmy in the summer that I turned 18, and I met him at a houseboat. My sister was dating somebody who was a good friend of Jimmy's. After we started dating, he had opened up Hawkeye Trading Post, buy, sell, trade. That was his first little foot in the door to, being in the pawn shop business.
Jimmy and Sandra married in 1987 and had 2 children together. But his dedication to work put a strain on the relationship.
Jimmy was a good father when he was around because he worked a lot. Like, he would leave in the morning and sometimes not come back until 1 or 2 in the morning. There's not one thing that led to the divorce. It was a lot of different things. It was a mutual agreement that it was better for us to split. However, when we got divorced, we still were friends.
Jimmy lived with his family for a few years until one of his business ventures got him into trouble with the law in 1992.
The DEA came out to our door like at 6 in the morning. They toted Jimmy out of there within the first half hour. They had a warrant for his arrest for manufacturing and growing marijuana.
Jimmy was convicted on drug charges and spent 3 years in prison. When he got out, Jimmy was anxious to reunite with his children and rebuild his pawn business.
He got a deal at a place out in Gladstone, a property. We named it A1 Hawk.
A1 Hawk is a state licensed pawn shop, and we buy and sell goods and also do 90-day collateral loans. So from open to close, we're buying inventory off of customers or we're selling inventory to customers.
As soon as his daughters could see over the counter, they came to work with him.
We would ask him for money, and he would say, well, how many hours have you worked? When I first started, I was very shy and I was timid, and I was scared to go out on the sales floor. I'd ask my dad a question in fear, like, Dad, what do I say? He's like, just go in there and tell everybody that there's a new sheriff in town, and act like you own the joint.
The business was a success, and Jimmy expanded to 3 locations. By 2021, Jimmy used the considerable wealth he'd earned to spoil his growing family as his daughters had started families of their own.
He didn't flaunt wealth. He didn't come off pretentious. He definitely used his money for fun. He had 2 houses. One was a floating home, one was just on the bank there. And I remember regularly working on that house and just being awestruck, like, how do you attain these properties?
He seemed like he was happy. Jimmy was a selfless person. He wanted it to be known that A1 Hawk wasn't like other pawn shops and to break the stigma behind most standard corporate pawn shops.
But this doting grandfather and entrepreneur has been found dead inside his sprawling riverfront mansion, and investigators are trying to determine why.
There was no firearm located anywhere. There was no shell casing located anywhere. So that led us to believe that, well, one, he couldn't have killed himself.
They did find 2 drink cups in the bedroom that, most people don't drink out of 2 different glasses of the same type of drink. So it would indicate that there was a second person there. One of the detectives went into the bathroom and found some prescriptions with the name Talia McDaniel.
He had his underwear and his socks on the floor, and I think he had his shirt draped over at the edge of the bed, so it appeared as though he had disrobed and gotten into bed.
It was very likely that the person that killed him was someone that was familiar to him. And it didn't appear there was any struggle. It didn't look like Mr. Pearson saw it coming.
Coming up, an old flame becomes a person of interest.
There was this falling out where money and possessions were taken.
And detectives access a crucial piece of evidence.
As we were looking through the ring footage on Mr. Pearson's phone, we found a female getting out of the vehicle and coming to the front door.
After Oregon detectives search 63-year-old Jimmy Pearson's ransacked bedroom, they suspect he was likely robbed and murdered in his own home.
We were aware that he had owned A1 Hawk pawn locations, and so the belief that because he was the owner of these locations that he would potentially have jewelry or cash on hand.
But it surely looked like somebody had gone through a lot of Mr. Pearson's possessions. When we noticed that he had the ring camera outside the front, we knew that it was likely going to capture whoever killed him. If they came in through the front door, we'd be able to see who did it and at what time the homicide occurred. We needed to gain access to Mr. Pearson's cell phone to gain access to the cameras. The issue was that the phone had a pass lock, so we couldn't get into the phone. So that was a little bit of a challenge.
During the search, 3 of Jimmy's associates have gathered in the driveway.
Mr. Merrill told us that after calling 911, he then called Mr. Pearson's attorney, his paralegal. They both came to the scene.
Detectives step outside to speak with them, starting with Tony.
He indicated that he had known Mr. Pearson for well over 20 years.
Mr. Merrill told investigators that the last time he had saw Mr. Pearson was they had gone to a casino.
They had spent some time up there gambling, eating, and in the early morning hours on February 27th, Mr. Merrill left Mr. Pearson at the casino. He said that was the last time that he had communicated with Mr. Pearson.
On March 3rd, he found it odd that he still had not heard from Mr. Pearson, and actually nobody had heard from him in a couple days. So Mr. Merrill decided he wanted to go inside and check to see if Mr. Pearson was okay.
He said he had access to the garage code. He noticed that the dog food dish was empty, or water bowl was empty. Took care of the dog, fed, water, took it out potty, and then he went to Mr. Pearson's room.
After Tony finishes detailing the events leading up to finding his deceased friend, detectives turn to Jimmy's attorney.
I was asking him a myriad of questions about Mr. Pearson's past and about who would want to harm him. Although he didn't try to throw shade, he indicated that there was a bit of a falling out between Mr. Pearson and his daughters over Mr. Pearson's personal life.
And he had known Mr. Pearson for a long time. They had become friends. He was now his wills and estates lawyer and had written a will for him recently in which he had essentially disinherited his 2 daughters.
The attorney says Jimmy decided to leave his fortune to himself and another friend rather than family.
He handed me his amended will that had just happened within a couple months prior to that, which to me was a little odd. Although it was suspicious how we were introduced, their cooperation led us to believe that his attorney didn't have anything to do with it. Anything that we needed or requested, they were quick to help us with. We asked her, because she knew a lot of Mr. Pearson's affairs, do you know what Mr. Pearson's passcode is? And at first she stated no, but they said, I might be able to locate it. She said one of the people that had access to Mr. Pearson's house was Mr. Pearson's housekeeper and would come every Monday. Since it was Wednesday at the time, we knew that Monday had just happened.
Investigators place a call to the housekeeper, hoping she might have seen something.
She had been there between the hours of 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. She said she entered the residence through the front door. She has a key Mr. Pearson provided her. She heard loud music coming from the direction of Mr. Pearson's room. She went to go check on Mr. Pearson, opened the door and saw his feet. Thought, oh, he's asleep. I don't want to bother him. So she's the one that actually shut the door, and she proceeded to clean the residence. I asked her, well, while you were there, did anything look odd or out of place or unusual? And the first thing she told me was, hey, you know what? When I was folding clothes, I noticed that there was some women's clothing that I was folding.
Mr. Pearson's housekeeper says it used to be a common occurrence, back when he was dating a woman named Tylea McDaniel.
He had a prior relationship with her, and when Tylea was living with Mr. Pearson, it was very common to see her clothing amongst Mr. Pearson's in the dryer. But that had been about a year prior.
To detectives, the name sounds familiar.
They had found prescription bottles that had belonged to a woman named Tylea McDaniel.
Detectives now aim to track down Ms. McDaniel to determine if she had a motive to harm Jimmy Pearson.
Obviously, that was a name that popped into our periphery as potentially being involved in this.
So when we looked up Mr. Pearson's name, we did find a report where he had claims that he'd been the victim of a burglary. He had listed Tylea McDaniel as stealing from him, and we started to believe that that may be who we needed to find.
The day after Jimmy Pearson was found dead, investigators interview his daughters, Sarah and Tanya Pearson.
They said they believed that he was murdered. And that was... I can't even say the feeling. There were so many feelings. I didn't even believe it.
I asked him questions about, hey, tell me about your dad, tell me about your dad's dealings, who he associated with.
Everybody loved Dad. Nobody hated Dad.
Mr. Pearson's daughter's interview was enlightening. They explained why the fallout with their father, and a lot of it had to do with the people he was keeping company with. They didn't like the females that he was around. They described as their feelings were they were potentially escorts.
The only person that came to my mind was Tylea. We started dating a young woman, and I believe she was around 20 years old. We would ask, how did you guys meet? She said it was like in the movie. We were at a grocery store, carts hit, and then he got my number. She didn't have a job, didn't have a car, didn't have a driver's license. She had nothing. Whether she was nice, great, she's nice. But you're gonna invite this person into your home? Into your business?
Their concern was that she was a bad influence on Mr. Pearson, and that kind of wasn't the type of grandfather that they wanted their children to be around.
As a result, Sarah quit working at the pawn shop, and her suspicions about Tylea grew.
I found out about a month later that my dad thought she took off with a whole bunch of cash and valuables at his house.
There was a report of a theft from this house about a year ago. That case was reported, but no charges were ever filed.
After the robbery, Jimmy broke off the relationship, but the rift between him and his daughters continued to grow.
It had to do with Jimmy feeling like they were trying to take over his life and tell him what to do. He enjoyed his life, he enjoyed partying, and wasn't going to listen to his daughters trying to convince him otherwise.
Despite their problems, Sarah and Tanya tell detectives they were unaware their father had written them out of his will.
They said that we would be getting a call from his lawyer and they would be reading his testimony. When it rains, it pours. And there were so many questions, but my only question was, what happened to my dad?
That day, the medical examiner conducts an autopsy that will answer their question.
It was determined that Mr. Pearson was shot once in the back of the head.
A bullet was removed, and it was identified as a .38 Special slug.
Now that Jimmy's cause of death is confirmed, investigators are eager to track down the person who pulled the trigger.
This paralegal, she contacted us, provided us the passcode, and when we entered it, thankfully it unlocked his phone. We were able to gain access to Mr. Pearson's text messages and also the Ring camera app.
But none of the messages are from Tylea.
The last read message was from Paris Royal Natasha.
It looked as if he had engaged with somebody to essentially set up a date for someone to come to his house. There was an exchange of messages of, are you here? Or, how far out are you, essentially?
Previous messages spell out the nature of the relationship.
Those messages were very clearly talking about money and them getting together and exchanging money for the time they spent together, which led us to believe that he was paying for her services as an escort. As we were looking through the Ring footage, we found a vehicle arriving at his house and a female getting out of the vehicle and coming to the front door.
Investigators are uncertain who the woman arriving is, but one thing is clear. She is not Tylea McDaniel.
They're two different sized people. They look very different, and it was clear that that was not who we were looking at. Miss McDaniel was no longer really on our radar.
Paris Royal Natasha, that's not a typical name that we tend to hear. So we had a feeling that that was likely not a real name. So one of the things that we did was we did a search, a law enforcement search of the phone number itself.
We were able to associate that phone number with a Natasha Rose Tate.
We utilized her driver's license photo, which we were able to use to compare to the person we saw in the Ring camera video.
She was wearing like a dark-colored sweatshirt and jeans and was carrying a bag with her. When she went to the door, Mr. Pearson greeted her, and then they went inside.
Two hours later, around 2:42 a.m., the footage shows Natasha leaving the home.
She comes back out and has the same red duffel bag in her hand, and it appears to be extremely full and heavy. In her right hand, it looks like she has maybe some reusable shopping bags or something else, not items that she had originally shown up with, but things that came from inside the home.
She makes several trips of carrying bags and boxes to her vehicle, put things in the vehicle.
It appeared she was wearing gloves, which was odd.
It was very clear that by the condition in which she found the house, how it looked like it had been ransacked, that Natasha was looking for any valuable she could to sell.
This appears suspicious given the larger context of finding Mr. Pearson deceased. At that point, we're attempting to develop as much information about her as possible. Who is she? Are there any law enforcement contacts in the area with her?
A search of police records results in a hit on Natasha's name.
She had been involved in a traffic stop 12 minutes after leaving Mr. Pearson's home.
The officer noted that there was a purse that was open on the front passenger seat of Natasha's car, and that there was a revolver handgun that was sitting in plain view.
She explained she was in possession of the gun because she took it from a friend, and that's not legal to transfer a firearm. The firearm was seized and placed into evidence by Milwaukee police.
During the traffic stop, there was no reason to detain her, but to investigators, the implications are clear.
A bullet was found in Mr. Pearson's head. It was removed and it was identified as a .38 Special Slug. And knowing that Officer Sanchez had seized the .38 caliber revolver from Nastasha the prior night, that immediately led me to believe that that was likely a murder weapon.
Now, the suspect has about a 2-day lead on law enforcement, so they need to make up 2 days very quickly, because the longer this goes on, the more difficult it is going to be able to find her.
Less than 48 hours into their investigation, homicide detectives have landed on a suspect in the murder of Jimmy Pearson, an apparent escort named Nastasha Tate. They send the evidence gathered so far for forensic testing.
We submitted the jacketed bullet that was recovered from Mr. Pearson's head. We submitted the firearm.
Police also obtain an arrest warrant for Nastasha, but they quickly realize she knows how to move under the radar.
The phone numbers that we had previously for her, we knew were no longer good. She was no longer using. She worked as an exotic dancer at a couple different nightclubs, gentlemen's clubs. So we had detectives go to those different locations to see if we could find her vehicle. Unfortunately, her vehicle was not found at any of those places. So that became the primary focus of this investigation, is where is she at?
Social media being such a large part of pretty much everybody's lives these days, they were able to find not only her escort page, but her private social media page.
Nastasha's personal account indicates family members are also looking for her.
One of the messages was left by her grandmother that said something similar to, "What the heck, we were all very worried about you."
When investigators reach out to the grandmother, she puts them in touch with Nastasha's mother.
They learn that Miss Tate's mother is Teresa Tate, and that she would be the person who would know where Nastasha Tate is if anybody knew.
When investigators went and spoke to Teresa Tate, she painted a pretty sad story of, what Nastasha's life had been. Had a pretty rough upbringing, couldn't read, couldn't write, had been introduced to prostitution at a fairly young age by a friend who she had kind of grown up with, who was a few years older.
She was very honest and upfront about, my daughter is associated with bad people. She's had multiple pimps. She has prostituted herself throughout the country.
She'd been trying to help her really get out of this world for a long period of time. But because Nastasha did not want that help, their communication had broken down.
Teresa said that Nastasha would only tell her very little about where she was. She would never tell her anything specific.
She said she's hidden in the past and laid low, but not really to this extent. Nastasha had spent time in Los Angeles, Minnesota, New York, Florida, Nevada. So really, she could have been anywhere.
When I left my business card and my phone number, and I told her, hey, if her daughter reached out to her, to let me know so that we can try to follow up. And she told us she would.
To aid in their search, detectives enlist the U.S. Marshals Service. They also file subpoenas for Nastasha's social media accounts.
When those records were received, they were also very enlightening.
She stated that she was looking for a gun from somebody. Another one was like almost an invitation to another person, like, hey, can you come join me to do this lick?
In the day before and even the day of Mr. Pearson's death and the time that she was at his house, she was reaching out to multiple people on Facebook talking about a big lick, kind of a big score.
And looking at Nastasha's social media, she liked shiny things. She liked driving around in a Mercedes. She liked to have possessions. It led us to believe that primary motivator for what Natasha did, it was greed, it was money.
The picture is becoming much more crystal clear that this was a planned event, that this wasn't something that she went there and it was a crime of passion. She intended to do this, and that she was setting herself up to do this to Mr. Pearson.
Coming up, detectives get a tip on Natasha's location.
Did she say where she was headed?
North Carolina.
And Natasha's mother makes a confession.
I just kept telling her your best bet is to get your taken care of and turn yourself in.
The hunt for Natasha Tate continues for a month with no sign of Jimmy Pearson's suspected killer. But on April 7th, 2021, investigators finally get a lead.
They put out this notice to all law enforcement they were looking for this Mercedes. And turns out that Mercedes ends up getting towed in Portland.
They made a call to the impound and said, do not release this vehicle to anybody. We're going to come down and get it.
That's when we were told that someone else had arrived and was trying to get the vehicle released to them. Turns out it was a friend of Natasha Tate's, and the tow company asked her to stick around, and detectives wanted to talk to her.
It turned out to be a woman named Monique.
Monique claims she bought the car from Natasha a month prior.
She said she was finna leave town and she sold my car, and I said, I'll take it.
I stated, okay, do you know where Natasha is now? And she stated that she didn't know where she was, but she and her boyfriend had driven Natasha to a bus stop on March 11th. Did she say where she was headed?
North Carolina.
But according to Monique, Natasha had an unexpected change of plans.
She did call me a couple days after she left, and she was in Florida. She was being really weird, and I kept saying, what's wrong? Like, what did you do? She's like, I can't tell you. I just gotta get away. I just gotta get away.
Detectives asked if there was any way that we could get a hold of her to try to track her down. Monique said that there really wasn't any clear way to get a hold of her because her number was changing and she was communicating on a Wi-Fi only phone. Learning that Natasha Tate was now potentially in Florida definitely added some complexity to the investigation. We couldn't be further away in Oregon from Florida.
2 days later, as detectives work with Florida police to locate Natasha, her mother calls to request a meeting.
She didn't want us to meet at her residence. She said she didn't want her neighbors to see her talking to the police, so we met her in some parking lot at a shopping center. She informed us that she had been communicating periodically with her daughter, Natasha, even though she told us she hadn't been hearing from her.
Teresa explains that she's been trying to convince her daughter to turn herself in.
I just kept telling her your best bet is to get your taken care of and turn yourself in, whatever it is. Because if you're running from something, it's just going to make it so much worse.
Hoping to pin down a location, detectives ask Teresa to make contact with Natasha.
I'd be fine with that because that's the only way we're going to get her, and she needs to be gone at this point. As much as it just feels so against the grain, I know it's the right thing to do for her anyway.
We left, and then a short time after we parted the company, she contacts Deputy Sanders, who's on the U.S. Marshals Task Force, and tells her, hey, FYI, she contacted me on the phone. So then we knew that that was a good number that we could use to try to track her.
Once they get that phone number, and they do what's called a trap and trace, and determined that she was in a bus stop not that far from the Tampa Bay Police Department. So then the Tampa Bay police officer went down there and went to the bus stop, and she stands out a little bit. She's got an unusual look to her and some tattoo on her face that's somewhat recognizable.
Nastasha is carrying the same sweatshirt detectives saw her sporting in the footage from Jimmy's doorbell camera.
It was a very distinct hoodie with some words on it, bougie or something along that line. The detectives got to keep an open mind to the possibility of a fight or a struggle.
They covertly took a picture of her in the area and sent it to detectives.
They sent to me, hey, is this her? And I was able to positively identify, yeah, that was her. At that point, I told them, yeah, that's her.
Once they confirmed that that was her, she was, cooperative, they then took her into custody.
I was called, told she's in custody, and travel arrangements were made for myself and my partner, Detective Michael Zacher, to fly out to Tampa, Florida immediately.
We went to an interview room and Nastasha was brought to us.
I would like a court-appointed lawyer.
I just want you to be aware that once we leave, that's basically our opportunity to tell us what happened, until trial happens.
Yeah, I'd still like an attorney.
Nastasha is charged with first-degree robbery and second-degree murder. While she's being extradited back to Oregon, Jimmy's family learns of the arrest.
We were so excited. Like, it was like we won the lottery.
They did give us the name, and then we, started looking it up because we'd never seen her before. She had 2 tattoos on her forehead.
There's no way. Dad hated tattoos. Dad did not associate with those kind of people, and there's just no way. We didn't believe it.
After a month-long investigation, 23-year-old Nastasha Tate has been charged for the murder of Jimmy Pearson. As prosecutors prepare the case for trial, the evidence against her continues to grow.
All of the evidence from the ballistics are all indicating the gun that was in her car 12 minutes after she left the house is the gun that caused his death.
Prosecutors believe the shooting was part of a premeditated plan.
She, as the evidence would indicate, was influenced and manipulated and trafficked in her past. And this was her one opportunity to turn things around and take control on her own. But she needed money to do that.
But as the court date approaches, Nastasha decides to make a deal instead of going before a jury.
If we were to go to trial, we might not be able to prove the first-degree murder. Since we don't have any eyewitnesses as to what actually happened in there, it's all circumstantial evidence. We came to agreement that she would plead to second-degree murder, which is also a true life sentence, but with consideration of parole after 25 years.
We said that we would be fine with doing that plea if she would give us a statement as to what happened and how it happened and why it happened.
In December 2021, Nastasha gives Jimmy's family what they asked for.
Her statement was that she had been up a few nights on a binger drinking and doing drugs, and that when she had gotten over there, they had a drink, and then they had went to the room and had a drink in there, and then she was going to give him a back massage, and she reached down into her bag and pulled out a gun, and he moved and it went off. And then she panicked and didn't know what to do.
She claims that it was an accident, yet she robbed him still and fled. If it was truly an accident, you probably would have made different choices.
She was looking for a gun. It's not self-defense. It's not an accident. It's something that was motivated by money and greed.
I don't believe it was even the truth of actually how things went down. I think it was premeditated, 100%.
She took away my dad. She took away my best friend, the one that I looked up to, my kids' grandfather that they'll never get to know. She took away our future with him. And yeah, it's horrible. Something that you can't get back. Sometimes I think about setting up a time to go and see her in prison and ask her for myself face to face. But then I go back and don't want to give her that time of day. Maybe someday I will.
Jim should be remembered as someone to aspire to on so many levels. As a father figure, as an entrepreneur, a business owner, there are a lot of outstanding qualities one would aspire to.
Jimmy was a truly compassionate and kind soul and giving. His daughters that have now taken over A1 Hawk, they completely live by his life with everything. The businesses ran the same exact way that Jim ran it, even listening to the same radio station for the past 8 years.
My sister and I, having sticking together, and as much as it's hard, especially both being hurt, that we just have to stick together. Dad is still teaching us from up above. We think about all of the good memories that we had with our dad. He will never be forgotten. I don't think that there's an hour that goes by that he doesn't cross my mind.